I used to think love was simple, predictable, something you could understand if you just paid attention. I was wrong. The night it all began to unravel started like any other Thursday. I came home from work, exhausted, my mind swirling with deadlines and the usual monotony. Rachel greeted me at the door with that same disarming smile I'd fallen for years ago. Her hug was warm, familiar, and for a brief second I felt at peace. But there was something off, just a flicker in her eyes, a hesitation I couldn't place. Dinner was silent. We both sat at the small kitchen table, the overhead light casting shadows that seemed to exaggerate every tension line in my face. Rachel fiddled with her fork, picking at the food I had cooked. I tried small talk, asking about her day, her work, her plans. Her responses were clipped, automatic, rehearsed. I wanted to ask why to push, but something in her demeanor warned me that this wasn't a conversation to be provoked lightly. Later, we settled on the couch with a movie. Her phone buzzed and she glanced at it, quickly sliding it face down on the coffee table. I felt my pulse quicken, my curiosity igniting like gasoline. When she left the room to freshen up, I couldn't resist. I reached for the phone. Hesitation lasted only a moment before I swiped through her messages. That's when I found him, Marcus. The messages were intimate, filled with inside jokes, laughter, and words that I had thought were reserved for me. My hands trembled, my chest constricted, and I felt my stomach drop. Rachel had a life I hadn't known, a hidden world thriving parallel to mine. I wanted to confront her immediately, to scream, to demand answers, but fear pinned me in place. I didn't know what I would find if I dug deeper, and part of me wanted to remain ignorant. That night sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory with her. Every laugh, every whispered word, every subtle glance now felt tainted. I realized how little I truly knew her. Rachel wasn't just keeping secrets, she was living a second life. And the knowledge that she had managed this for so long without me noticing was like a knife twisting in my gut. The next morning I acted normal, smiling, talking casually, masking the storm brewing inside. I told myself I would gather evidence before confronting her, that I needed the full picture. It was a dangerous plan, but love had clouded judgment before, and this time I needed clarity. I began observing her movements, her routines, noting patterns that might reveal more of the truth. As days passed, the suspicion became an obsession. Every detail mattered: how she answered calls, the timing of her texts, the fleeting expressions on her face. Friends noticed my distraction, asking if I was okay. I smiled, nodded, and pretended everything was fine. But inside, a storm raged. The woman I loved, trusted, and planned my future with was now a stranger, and I didn't know what she was capable of. And yet I couldn't let go. Part of me clung desperately to the hope that the woman I had known was still inside her somewhere, that this double life was just a phase, a mistake. But fear gnawed at the edges of that hope. Every instinct screamed that things were far worse than I dared imagine. And so I waited, observed, and planned, knowing that the first step in uncovering the full truth could change my life forever. The more I watched, the more I realized just how carefully Rachel had constructed this secret life. Every movement, every word, every glance she shared with Marcus was deliberate, rehearsed, hidden in plain sight. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a complete alternate existence that had been thriving beneath my nose for months, maybe years. My mind raced constantly, plotting how to uncover more without alerting her. Sleep became scarce, and the lines between reality and obsession blurred. I began documenting everything. Small notebooks appeared in hidden corners of the apartment, pages filled with times, places, and strange coincidences. The way she left work at odd hours, the mysterious phone calls that she brushed off as work stuff, the unexplained receipts and subtle cash withdrawals. Each detail felt like another piece of a puzzle that would ultimately reveal a picture I wasn't sure I was ready to see. Then came the night that changed everything. I decided to follow her. The rain-slicked streets reflected the city lights, and my heart hammered as I kept a careful distance. She drove to a part of town I didn't recognize, a quiet block lined with unremarkable buildings. Marcus arrived shortly after, casual and confident, moving as if he belonged there. They entered together, laughing softly, exchanging glances that made my stomach twist. I stayed hidden, barely breathing, feeling the cold rain soak through my jacket. Inside, I saw them move with a familiarity that was breathtaking and horrifying all at once. Stacks of cash, envelopes, a laptop illuminated the room. The precision with which they handled everything, the intimacy, the quiet laughter, all of it confirmed my worst fears. Rachel wasn't just cheating, she was deeply involved in something I couldn't fully understand. My hands shook and my chest tightened. This wasn't a private affair anymore. It was something calculated, deliberate, and dangerous. Returning home, I faced her as if nothing had happened. She smiled, laughed, and acted normal while I sat across from her, hollow and haunted. Every word she spoke, every glance she cast felt like a lie I couldn't escape. I realized that confrontation wasn't an option, not yet. Not until I knew the full extent of her deception. To act prematurely could jeopardize everything, perhaps even my safety. Fear replaced anger. Paranoia replaced trust. The days that followed were tense and suffocating. I tested her subtly, asking questions with casual tones, probing for inconsistencies. She answered effortlessly, smiling, deflecting, maintaining her facade. But beneath the mask I saw cracks, small, almost imperceptible hints of guilt and awareness. Each day I fell deeper into observation, unable to escape the spiraling obsession that now dominated my life. And still I loved her. That was the cruelest part. Every time she smiled, every time her hand brushed mine, a flicker of hope surged, clashing violently with the gnawing certainty of betrayal. I was trapped in a web of love, fear, and suspicion, unable to act, unable to leave, and unable to fully confront the truth that had already begun to consume me. The story was far from over, and I had no idea how dark it would become before it ended. By now, my life was split in two. One half was mundane, the apartment we shared, the routines we followed, the laughter I forced myself to believe was genuine. The other half existed in the shadows, trailing her, tracking her every move, piecing together a secret existence I could barely comprehend. I was exhausted, every nerve on edge, and yet I couldn't stop. Obsession had replaced trust, fear had become a constant companion, and the woman I loved had become a stranger. I began keeping meticulous notes, scribbling details into notebooks late into the night. Times, dates, locations, patterns, all recorded in frantic handwriting. I told myself I was being careful, methodical, preparing for the moment I would confront her with undeniable proof. But the truth was, the act of observing her, of piecing together her hidden life, had become addictive. Sleep was scarce. My dreams were haunted by images of Rachel and Marcus, laughing, exchanging secrets, living a life I couldn't touch. Then came the motel. She drove into a part of town I didn't recognize, parked, and Marcus arrived moments later. Through the blinds, I watched them enter together, laughter quiet but intimate, gestures deliberate and knowing. My chest tightened as I saw stacks of cash, envelopes, and a laptop, tools of a secret life I didn't understand. Rachel's movements were precise, calm, terrifyingly controlled. She wasn't just hiding an affair, she was orchestrating a life I couldn't even imagine. Returning home, Rachel greeted me as if nothing had happened. Her smile was warm, her voice soft, casual. I couldn't reconcile the images I had seen with the woman in front of me. Every touch, every word now carried a double meaning. I felt trapped between the love I still held and the fear I couldn't escape. This duality consumed me, turning ordinary moments into minefields, where one misstep could expose the truth, or worse. Over the next days, I tested her, probing gently, looking for inconsistencies. She remained flawless, a master of deflection, her composure terrifying in its perfection. The woman I had trusted implicitly was gone, replaced by someone calculating, skilled, and untouchable. Each discovery tightened the grip of obsession on me, making it impossible to see a path forward. Love had blinded me, but fear now sharpened my senses. And then I found more evidence. Emails, hidden receipts, messages pointing to people and places I didn't recognize. Rachel's world was larger than I had imagined, and the scope of her secrecy was staggering. My heart pounded as I realized that the betrayal was no longer emotional alone. It had become structural, a hidden network in which I was a pawn unknowingly placed. Survival, not love, became my guiding principle. The story had shifted from heartbreak to survival. Each step I took needed careful calculation. Every observation, every night spent watching, every plan I made was a measure of control in a life now dominated by deceit. And as I sat in the darkness, staring out at rain-slicked streets, I knew one truth. The next move would determine whether I survived, whether I preserved my sanity, or whether I would be consumed entirely by the dangerous world Rachel had created. The tension in our apartment became unbearable. Every smile, every casual touch from Rachel felt like a lie. I couldn't eat properly, sleep was shallow and fleeting, and even the walls seemed to close in. Friends called and checked in, but I waved them off, insisting everything was fine. Fine. A word that no longer had any meaning. Then came the night I followed her again. Rain-slicked streets reflected neon lights and my pulse raced with each turn. She drove to an unfamiliar part of town, parked outside a nondescript building. Marcus arrived soon after, casual and confident, and they entered together. Through a crack in the blinds, I saw envelopes, cash, a laptop, every movement deliberate, precise. The intimacy between them, the calm familiarity, was almost unbearable. I felt powerless, a witness to something far beyond my comprehension. Back at home, Rachel returned as if nothing had happened. Her smile, her laughter, her casual touch were poison to my mind. I mimicked normalcy, engaging in shallow conversation while my thoughts swirled with fear and suspicion. Confrontation wasn't an option. Not yet. To act prematurely could be dangerous. I realized this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was a game I wasn't equipped to play, a dangerous labyrinth I had stepped into blindly. Days blurred into weeks. I probed subtly, asking questions, nodding responses, tracking inconsistencies. Rachel remained impeccable, calm, deflecting skillfully. She had become a master of secrecy, manipulation, and concealment. Every discovery, every small hint, deepened the tension and made the walls around me feel smaller. I was trapped in a world designed to deceive me, dominated by her hidden life. And then I found something that left me reeling. Hidden beneath her laptop, a small envelope contained cash and a list of names I didn't recognize. My hands shook, heart pounding. The woman I loved was enmeshed in something much larger than infidelity, a network I couldn't yet grasp. Fear settled into certainty. Staying meant danger, leaving meant loss, and navigating between required careful precision. By the end of the week, I understood one truth. I couldn't remain ignorant. I couldn't continue pretending. Every move, every word, every breath I took had to be measured. Rachel's life was now a threat, not just emotionally but physically and psychologically. And I was caught in the center, powerless to stop the momentum she had built. The stakes had shifted. What began as betrayal had escalated into survival, with consequences I could only imagine. Love had blinded me, but obsession and fear sharpened my mind. The next steps would determine everything: freedom, sanity, and perhaps even life itself. I had no choice but to continue down the path I had started, however dangerous, however uncertain. The breaking point came unexpectedly, on a Thursday night drenched in rain. I parked in the shadows outside the motel, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles whitened. Rachel had left hours earlier and Marcus was due soon. I told myself this would be the last time I followed her. I needed the full truth, no matter the cost. Marcus arrived first, moving with confidence, carrying a small duffel bag. Rachel followed, glancing nervously at the empty streets, coat tight around her shoulders. Together they entered the room, moving with ease, laughing softly, exchanging subtle glances that twisted my stomach. I watched through the blinds as they organized envelopes, counted cash, and worked on a laptop. Rachel's calm, deliberate movements were terrifying. I had loved a woman who no longer existed. The person in front of me was meticulous, calculating, and dangerous. And then it escalated beyond comprehension. Marcus opened a drawer and pulled out a handgun. Rachel handled it effortlessly, loading it as if this were routine. My chest constricted, my pulse hammered. Confronting her now would be fatal. The betrayal had shifted from emotional to life-threatening. The woman I had loved, trusted, and envisioned a future with had become someone unrecognizable, someone untouchable. Fear, not heartbreak, ruled me. Returning home, Rachel greeted me with warmth, laughter, and casual touches, pretending nothing had occurred. I lay awake, haunted by the motel, by the envelopes, the cash, and the gun. Survival, not love, became my priority. I realized I could not remain, not if I wanted to keep my mind, my safety, or my life intact. Walking away was the only option, even though it shredded my heart. By morning, I packed quietly, taking only essentials. No notes, no confrontations, no explanations. I left the apartment, leaving her to her secrets, her schemes, and the dangerous world she had constructed. Walking away wasn't surrender. It was reclaiming control, survival over love, sanity over obsession. Every step away from her apartment was a small victory, a step toward regaining a life almost destroyed by betrayal. The days that followed were tentative. I rebuilt slowly, painfully. Sleep returned in fragments, peace returned cautiously. Rachel's shadow lingered in memory, but it no longer dictated my reality. Love had blinded me, obsession had consumed me, and betrayal had nearly destroyed me. But survival gave me strength. In walking away, I learned that freedom, even accompanied by heartbreak, was the truest justice. Sometimes, leaving is the only way to reclaim your life. And in that bitter, lonely victory, I found clarity.